Well. Nice of you to join us, Kyle. DarbyCast, Monday, sports. Boy, Kyle, I love that you've got puppies in your life. However, got to give you a little bit of coaching and say, hey, show up to work. Huh? Show up to work. How about that? DarbyCast doctors, they're getting pissed, Kyle. They're so pissed. Usually a fairly even-tempered bunch. Probably pretty pissed off right now. Kyle, why don't you go ahead and after this is over and you're walking your dogs, why don't you just take a couple minutes and be like, I've got multiple responsibilities. I'm imploding the brand of the DarbyCast because the DarbyCast preaches personal responsibility and things like self-sacrifice. So we can't have you mucking up what we're trying to do here. Okay? All right. With that being said, sports, still quite boring. NFL Red Zone, pretty sweet, because you don't see the crowd, you just see the action. So it almost feels as though it's not a weird year for everything, which is kind of nice. And Scott Hansen, the Red Zone guy, boy, is that guy just a broadcaster's delight. He does it all. 7 hours of commercial-free NFL football. But they're starting to sneak commercials in there. What a bunch of jokes. Speaking of jokes, let's get into some NFL news. I don't even know if this is a joke. It's not. Let me just backtrack. Let's just go for some NFL news. Joe Burrow, good guy, Bengals QB. Boy, did he jack up his leg. Oh, not as upsetting looking as Dak Prescott when Dak's entire ankle was rearranged into a way that was anatomically incorrect. But Joe Burrow, boy, did he take an arrow to the knee. And by an arrow, I mean a linebacker or a lineman. I wasn't paying that close of attention. But let's talk about what that means for Colin Kaepernick. Because whenever a quarterback gets hurt on a crappy team, everybody seems to immediately be like, oh, Colin? Why isn't he playing? Let's get Colin Kaepernick in the mix. And it's like, he's kind of old news. He's getting over the hill. He hasn't played in quite some time. Probably hasn't kept his competitive nature. I don't know. I don't follow this guy. I love making call-outs on the DarbyCast that are just kind of based on intuition. Some people probably hate that. They're like, give me the facts. What's Colin's 40 time? And it's like, who cares? Grow up. Grow the hell up. But yeah, I don't know if I've ever talked about Kaepernick on the DarbyCast on a sports Monday. Because he is, like I said a few moments ago, if you're tracking with this, he is old news. But people love rekindling that what if scenario. Like, what if Kaepernick came back? He's so good. It's like, he's a pretty big distraction. The NFL still is more so than the NBA, is more concerned with the sport than the social justice. Like as a league, I don't think the NFL has sold out to the Chinese Communist Party or the Democratic Party or BLM, any of these organizations. They're still autonomous for the most part. And so occasionally they put their foot down and they're like, hey, can you focus on winning games? Like, I know you got some extracurriculars going on. You can continue pursuing those things, but I don't want it to eclipse your actual job. And then Kaepernick's like, well, fuck that, man. And they're like, okay, well, we're going to part ways. And then everybody's like, are you kidding me? And it's like, well, they're an employer. They can have employment standards. They're an at-will employer. A good friend of mine, great friend, actually, really good dude, big heart, mighty spirit, really tight diet, guy eats pretty well. He was telling me the other day, he's like, do you think I could just not show up to my job and give my reasoning that I wasn't comfortable working until there was peace in the Middle East. And I was like, dude, that's a pretty good call out. And I think the answer to that is no. You're not as high profile as an NFLer, but you're making a really good point. I don't think you would continue to be paid or employed if you were like, guys, I can't come in. The Israel-Palestine thing has been going on for too long. Unless it stops like yesterday, I'm out and you're going to have to keep paying me. You can't do that at most jobs. But I love that example. Smart guy who said that. He's a serious listener of the DarbyCast as well. That gives you a sense for your peers as a DarbyCast doctor. Like, wow, I am in good company of fantastic people who make exceptional analogies. I like that. But let's go back to Kaepernick. Let's say the Bengals sign Kaepernick. You'd have to think that he would pull some stunts, right? That the whole thing would just turn into this media circus. Because how could it not? And he's bankrolled, right? Nike's all about what he's doing, and it's like, hey, Phil Knight, you got slave labor in China. Why don't you sort that out before bankrolling some social justice for millionaire athletes? Huh? Is that an inappropriate take? Is it? I don't know. Are we comparing apples to oranges? Are we comparing Chinese factory workers to NFL Cincinnati Bengals? Kind of. A little bit. I don't think many people have done that comparison before, but you're no stranger to that. If you're a DarbyCast doctor, where you're like, whoa, didn't see those concepts coming together quite so smoothly. Impressed? That's how I feel. That's what you say to yourself. But can you imagine Colin? He's under center. First quarter, 10 minutes to go. Calls an audible. Takes a knee. Kaepernick. Oh, there's his famous audible, George Floyd. And yep, he's taking a knee. Is that a shit joke or is that really excellent? I don't know. Kyle, I don't even know if I want to consult with you and your opinions. You might have to have a timeout. What am I talking about? You're an adult. What do you think about that? Good joke? Good call? Kaepernick calling his famous audible. Kaepernick's an interesting case. He is. His father left his mother at an early age, and then he was adopted by an affluent Caucasian family. And I think he enjoyed pretty much the best of everything for his entire life. And then he decided to pivot and be like, everything's bullshit in this country. And it's like, Colin, you may have been the direct beneficiary of the very thing that you claim to be against. Ironic. Hypocritical? Question mark. You think Kaepernick and Gavin Newsom hang out and they just talk about how they can do one thing and say the other? Perhaps. They're both pretty good at it. You're not allowed to say crap like this. Not in polite company, at least. I mean, if I were around some idiots right now, they'd be like, hey. And I'd be like, okay. They'd call me names and I'd be like, but you didn't refute any of the things I said. That's kind of how these conversations go. You're like, hey, but what about this? And they're like, well, you're a piece of shit. Argument over. And then you say like, I don't like talking to you. But now let's pivot back to Joe Burrow, who jacked up his knee. Because that's another thing I want to talk about. How does that knee heal up? Is it going to be as good as it was? Who knows? He's pulled a couple scrambles this year. Ill-advised. He's not a fast guy. He's gotten blown up pretty hard. His knee injury was not on one of his slow motion underwater-like scrambles. But is that knee ever going to be the same? And that is going to be the topic of the day. Let's get away from Kaepernick. Because really, old news. I gave that too much attention, but I kind of had to give you a little bit of what's really going on with Kaepernick. Direct beneficiary. Yeah. And this is going to be an unpopular opinion too. I think he lost his right to complain when he's like, sacrifice everything if it means doing a good job. What was the quote? Believe in something if it means sacrificing everything. I think that's more of what he said. So it's like, all right, deal with the sacrifice. Stick to your guns. You're probably richer now than you were when you were in the NFL. Kyle, pull up Colin Kaepernick's net worth as I talk about Joe Burrow's jacked up knee. Okay, so I've been thinking about this because Joe Burrow, he messed up his knee, and I felt like a kindred spirit with him because I too have a trick knee. And what's the difference between an injured knee and a trick knee? Trick knee lasts for a real long time. Forever, actually. And it sounds cooler. Like, oh, I tore my ACL. Oh, I tore my meniscus. Got to have surgery. Do you want to tell people that? Or do you want to occasionally say, I can't play pickup ball today, guys. My trick knee's acting up. How much better does that sound? Then people are like, wow, this guy's actually played a lot of games. Knows how to listen to his body. That's very cool. That's very exceptional in the awareness department. Burrow is probably going to get some pretty high quality medical attention, and his knee might come back either robotic or enhanced with mutagenic perks. What that means, not entirely clear, but it sounds pretty solid. The old trick knee, though. There are only a few body parts that you can describe as being trick. Oh, that's my trick ankle. That's my trick knee. I think as soon as you move above the knee, things are just really catastrophic. You're like, I need a hip replacement. My back, I have a slipped disc. I have a slap tear of my labrum in my shoulder. Nobody's got a trick shoulder. Okay? So maybe you count your blessings if you got a jacked up knee, but you can still kind of operate at 70% capacity. And you're like, well, trick knee. Which brings me to my next point. Is our country, do we have a trick knee? Do we have multiple trick knees and trick ankles? What do those analogies mean to you? Where did your mind just go? Take a second and be like, what is the country's trick knee? What is so jacked up? It's been going on for so long that at this point we just have to deal with it. You have some people on the left and be like, injustice. And then you have other people being like, H-1B visas, high-tech workers coming from Asia, lowering wages for high-skilled workers. I don't know. Maybe people are saying that. Maybe that's our trick knee. Maybe it's massive corporations with anti-competitive monopolistic behavior. Maybe that's the trick knee. Do we just learn to deal with it? Or do we go in for aggressive surgery? Do we still have the capacity to do something radical, to do something heroic medically? I don't want to take a knee. I want to restore a knee. Colin Kaepernick would never understand that. I'm going to go out on a limb here and tell you another thing. A coalition of NBA players met with the Pope today to discuss their plan moving forward and what they want to see done. And I hate to burst that bubble. And I'm not talking about the NBA bubble, but you could make the argument that I am bursting an NBA bubble. That social justice, if Donnie J. Trump comes back, overturns the election results that the media has taken the liberty of calling, which I think is ill-advised. I think you just got to play the waiting game. Bush v. Gore, we waited an entire month for that. And some people are like, why does it take so long to count votes? And honestly, I think it's because our country is a little trick knee in the voting department. You get that? Maybe a trick ankle of a voting system. But check this. Behind closed doors in Vatican City, Pope Francis, Satanist, definitely not a Catholic. Let's keep that entirely clear. Dude is very pro-sodomy and other stuff. Listen, do what you want, but like if you're the Pope, stick to the book. Okay? Don't be the most progressive Pope of all time to the point where, boy, did he really blow his cover as being non-Catholic. and just being a spiritual Satanist. Cat's out of the bag, Francis. I think the next pope is going to have to come out and just say, Francis was a piece of work. He was a real sloppy guy who was not principled, and he just used his post, claimed to have a connection with God, even though his connection is with whom? The devil. Called out Francis. But this meeting, surprised Colin Kaepernick didn't work his way into the NBA meeting. Show up, take a knee. Does this put me in a category of hateful bigots? I don't know, maybe. Maybe in some people's eyes, they'd be like, you, sir, are what's wrong with the planet. And I'll be like, interesting. I don't know what you say to that, but let's get back to this meeting. Keep getting sidetracked on tangential nonsense, even though it's all related. Boom. Gotcha. So what does that meeting sound like? Francis and the players, they're probably going to get together, Vatican City. They're going to say, well, if Trump wins, we'll continue with the social justice movement. Otherwise, we'll see at the next election. Otherwise, your issues will be pushed back for quite some time. But if Trump wins, we are going to go nuts. Do we have an accord here in Vatican City? I'll tell you what, that Lucifer filleting Pope that is Francis, real Catholics, they don't like him. They don't like him. I'm not Catholic, but when you say, hey, is the Pope Catholic? And the answer to that is no. Now the church has a trick knee. More like a shredded knee. You need a full knee replacement. You can't even play 70% of your pickup ball matches. When the head honcho in the Catholic Church is like, hey, I'm pro gay marriage. It's like, it's inconsistent, Pope Francis. When the Catholic Church leadership starts to sound like the left-leaning Western media in their attitudes, when they sound like they're aligned, that should alarm people. It should. It should. Kyle, you know it should. Kyle's Catholic, even though he's from Dubai, because he's bought in. I love that about you, Kyle. You're a good dude. You go to Mass every Sunday, and I respect it. But I think the major takeaway from this episode is that we start measuring problems in gradations of busted up knees. We say, well, that's a full knee replacement, or that's a trick knee, or walk it off, you pussy. Maybe those are the 3 levels of jacked up knee. And I feel like I don't even need to ask you to do this, because you as a DarbyCast doctor will probably start doing this because you understand how important it is and what a great call it is as well. To be like, oh man, this election, talk about a full knee replacement, if you ask me. Then you don't even explain it to anyone. That's what you do as a DarbyCast doctor, is you get some really key inside jokes and you start railroading people with these jokes, and you never explain them until they just start adopting it. You force feed catchphrases. Be like, well, the country's got kind of a trick knee right now. We're a little bit off course, but I think we could just play 70% of our games, pickup games. In the grand scheme of things, our country is very, very young. We are in our budding, nascent stages, and we already have a busted knee. Sounds like Joe Burrow. Rookie season, totally trash knee. Some of you were wondering if I could tie this all together. And surprise, surprise, it happened. Per usual. Wouldn't that be great, though, if the Bengals got Kaepernick? Kyle, no, it wouldn't. It would put that organization in a very strained position. I suppose you're right. So here's the other takeaway. If your organization or your country or your entire church, like the Catholic Church, if one of these things has a busted knee, you don't bring in somebody who's just going to take a knee. If the leader of your organization has a busted knee, much like Joe Burrow or Pope Francis, do you replace him with somebody who's going to willingly call an audible and be like, guys, we're taking knees? No, sir. No, sir. You say, sorry, we're not going to sign you. And of course, this DarbyCast makes me wonder, am I going to get sent to like a gulag? Kyle, I don't think you're going to get sent there because you don't talk. But maybe they just call it training camp where we rehab knees. But really, it's just a gulag work camp. Who knows? Maybe that's who will sign Colin Kaepernick, is a big gulag. And be like, hey, you are going to rehab everyone's knee, Colin. That's code. Of course it's code. And people are going to give pushback. I'll give pushback. I'll be like, my knee is fine. It's fine. Then Colin's going to be like, well, it's time to take a knee. And then he's going to pull kind of a Tanya Harding on me and be like, sorry, your knee's now exploded. That'd be pretty upsetting if my own lingo was used against me. All the knee parallels, very dangerous. But Burrow, I wish you a speedy recovery. That's what I want to say to wrap up this DarbyCast. Sports Monday, late release. Normally, these come out at 5 a.m. For the early risers who really look forward to the DarbyCast. Kyle, I'm looking at you. Quit messing this up. Let's wrap this one up. Send this to somebody who's got a trick knee or a trick ankle. But if they have a terrible shoulder rotator cuff tear, you don't have to send it to them. You don't. Because they probably wouldn't get it. But that'll do it for a little DarbyCast Monday sports. Back Wednesday. And I think you know what's coming. The dramatic conclusion of Lord of the Rings. LOTRROTK. The economics of Lord of the Rings done right. And boy, there are so many economic lessons to be learned. And so if you missed that one, you may as well just jump off a building, knees first. You may as well jump off a 2-story building, knees first. That way you don't die. You just really jack your knees up. You could even do it from a 1-story building. If you're not going to tune in on Economics Wednesday to finish the Lord of the Rings series, I hope your knees get hurt. And I never wish injury upon anyone, but maybe an accident happens to you in the knee department. Oof, dark thought. And you know what? Let me just backtrack on that. I don't hope anything happens to you, but if you don't listen, it probably will. So keep that in mind. DarbyCast, this is Monday. This is sports. A lot of unpopular takes, but are they unpopular or are they incorrect? Are those mutually exclusive categories? Even though something is politically incorrect, does that mean it's inaccurate? Food for thought. Food for thought. Yum, yum, yum. I hope your knees are safe. But if you don't listen on Wednesday, no promises. DarbyCast, Monday, sports.